Yeah. Pro Fan Sports Podcast. Let's get it. Pro fans, tune into the program. Every single week, get the dope, fam. Sean on the mic, very flat too. Keep you updated, that's what we do. Pro fans, tune into the program. Pro fans, tune into the program. Pro fans, tune into the program. Every single week, get the dope, fam.
Yo, what to do, everybody? It's your boy John Altidor with Pro Fan Sports Podcast. Back to catch you with another one. My boys Vlad, Barry, and today we got Boston Globe National NBA writer Gary Washburn on the show, man. Very good to meet you, and thank you for being on the show, man. How you doing?
I'm good to be on the show.
Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you so much for being here and for coming on and and joining us today. Definitely big fan of your work. Been reading your articles for a while on the Boston Globe, and and definitely enjoy always reading the content that you have on there regarding the Celtics. So it's certainly an honor and a privilege to have you on this podcast. It's greatly appreciated.
Not all that, but yeah, I appreciate it.
No, it is all that, man.
Yeah, it is, man.
You, man.
That's how we really feel. That's how I feel, man.
So
I'm just keeping it real and letting you know. Like, that's how I'm being sincere and genuine.
I know. I appreciate that, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I know. I hope I didn't overwhelm you too much.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
I mean, especially, in the Boston media, what I'm saying? We don't have too many, African-American, sports writers out here. So it's definitely a pleasure for us to have you on the show, man. You've been doing this for, over 20 years now. So, like Barry was saying, man, we've been reading your stuff for a long time. And, we're trying to, blaze a little trail right here in Boston, in the sports industry. So it's definitely cool, man. We got a lot to talk about in terms of, the Celtics. Firstly, last night, there was a pretty big event around here with KG coming back with his retirement, man. I know you were there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what was that like?
Well, Celtics always do these types of things first class. They always roll out the red carpet. So this was no surprise that they put on a great program for Kevin, and he soaked it all in. And I think it's good for him in terms of someone who, I don't know. When Kevin Garnett was playing, not everybody was a big fan of Garnett. They didn't like how he carried himself on the court, his trash talk, some of his emotions, things like that. He wasn't always everyone's favorite player. But I think over the last several years, people have learned to appreciate, as kind of like our society has become more free and more expressive. People have learned to appreciate what he did during his time. He was doing this in the 90s. He started obviously in 1995 and played 20 years. So he was doing this in the 90s when, he was considered brash and a trash talker and that type of thing. It wasn't, quote unquote, polite behavior on the floor, but he kind of set the standard and brought that passion to the game that in some ways have been missing. So I thought it was great for him to take in all the appreciation, smell all the flowers that he got yesterday, and all the kudos for a great career, playing obviously a long time, developing his game over the years. More, when he came into the league in 1995, he was just a freakish athlete. He was a 6'11", 7-foot kind of forward, and the league had really not seen many guys like that. He wasn't going to be playing heads up against Patrick Ewing and Hakeem Olajuwon and, some of these big burly centers. He was going to be a 4. And the league hadn't really seen many 7-foot 4s before he got to the league. That's why there was so much. If you had to draft over again, remember, Garnett went 5th. In that 1995 draft, because one, he was coming straight out of high school, and people weren't certain about. He was the first player in 20 years. I think young people don't understand how big of a deal that was, because there was high school kids who were probably could have been, I mean, obviously Kobe came after that, and people think it's always been that way, but for a 20-year period, no high school kids came out of the draft. Magic Johnson was a sophomore, like all the game's greats. Michael Jordan went to North Carolina for 3 years and could have considered coming back for his senior year, right? Before Dean Smith was like, no, you're ready. Go. You need to get out of here. So for him to come out of high school, straight out of high school, play in a city like Minneapolis, and develop into the superstar, the defensive player that he was, is a compliment to his passion, to his work ethic, and all the above. And he was a fun guy to cover. He was a passionate guy about everything, and kind of a moody at times. But it was good to see him get that appreciation, because I think people were hard on him. I mean, I always think, like, now we look at the NBA games and somebody shoots the ball after the whistle, and some dude, the other team goes up and blocks it after the whistle, or takes it off the rim, make sure it don't go in. That's normal now. When Garnett did it, because Garnett was the first one to do that, he was a jerk for that. Like, he was petty. Now petty's cool, right? Petty's acceptable. But if you look back at, now that every NBA game, some dude throws up something after the whistle, some other dude on the team grabs it, knocks that off the rim. No, it's not going in. You ain't making the shot. Kevin invented that. And 10, 15, 20 years ago, when he was doing that, that's petty. That's, it's after the whistle, don't count anyway. But now, somehow that's become cool. So it seems like all the things that he did, trash talk, get in your face, get the fans, all has now come back and been cool, as opposed to when it was kind of the post-Jordan era or the end of the Jordan era that he was coming in. It was still kind of a more conservative NBA, more traditional, older guys. This is how you carry yourself. This is what you do. And Kevin helped break those barriers.
Yeah, that's awesome. Did anybody tell Kevin that this was like a family show? Because at the end there, he's like, I knew y'all fuck with me, but I didn't know y'all fuck with me. Like, oh,
yeah,
man.
if you're going to have Kevin on your thing, this is who he is. Like, anybody who's been around Kevin knows he curses. Like, it's like saying what and, do to us, the words that we use in normal language, that, the 4-letter words and the MFs and all that, that's normal. So it did not surprise me. He speaks in that language. I've heard that he has spoken like that in meetings with, TNT officials, things like that. So that's just who he is. And he was authentically himself yesterday. And I think that's what you have to appreciate about Kevin Garnett, is the authenticity, never being fake. Even the issues with Ray Allen, that was real. Like, he was not happy. And he doesn't hide his emotions. He's not faking it. He's not going to do anything just to put up a facade or a front and make somebody feel better. He's going to let you know how he feels. And so I appreciated him as a player. It was fun covering him in terms of the 5 years that I did cover him, or 4 or 5 years I covered him. And always enjoyed his game.
I think Kevin was here for like 6 years, since he got
6
traded
years.
in '08, right? Have you ever seen a player go into an organization and change it as much as Kevin did, for the Boston Celtics?
Not more often. I mean, you can look at Magic Johnson with the Lakers, because the Lakers hadn't won a title in 7 years. They were kind of like, even with Kareem in the late 70s, they were not, they were getting smashed by the Sonics, by the Blazers. Like, they were not the best team in the West when Magic got there. Even though they had Kareem, they had Norm Nixon and all those guys, they were still kind of like the third or fourth team in the West. And then once Magic got there, 5 championships in 11 years, right? Or 5 championships in 8 years. So you could say Magic, but in terms of the Celtics, and, we have real short memories. Like, the the Celtics in the mid-2000s was a franchise that was in real trouble. I'm not talking about they was going to move away, anything like that, to be disbanded, but they were just they were going young, right? You remember Gerald Green and Al Jefferson and young Kirk, and they were trying to go through these youth movements, and they were trying to get younger. And even before then, when they got Chauncey and Ron Mercer and Antoine, like they were trying to build these, kind of championship teams through the draft because they were so bad, and they got hurt by obviously Bird retiring, after like 11, 12 years. Bird didn't, Bird kind of his body gave out on him. Parrish left. McHale's body gave out on him. And then obviously the death of Len Bias affected all that, because if Bias starts in 86, he is in his prime by the time Bird and him leave, right? And he takes the mantle and runs. And then you got Reggie Lewis and him probably running things in Boston, but then Reggie Lewis passes away. So this team had been trying since the 80s to kind of rebuild and retool. And they had a little run with Antoine and Paul going to East Conference Finals against the Nets. But by then, they had lost 18 in a row in 06, 07. They were just running. They didn't know what to do. And finally, Danny said, you know what? I'm going all in. I'm going to trade for Ray Allen. I'm going to trade for Kevin Garnett. We're going to dump all these young prospects. And, let's be honest, like it worked out for him. I mean, Al Jefferson had a solid NBA career. Gerald Green never reached what he was. Neither did like Sebastian Telfair. Ryan Jones was a guy. Like they thought that those guys would be the building blocks for, like the Jalen and Jasons now, and it just didn't work out that way. But Danny went all in, and when you go to a franchise and you immediately win a championship the next year, and Kevin was all business when he got to Boston, and they were able, getting him and Ray, they were able to attract guys like the Eddie Houses and the PJ Browns and the Sam Cassells, dudes who were like, okay, like I'm gonna run with this because y'all gonna win, and I'm gonna sign a little 1-year deal, or I'm gonna take less money. And then they brought back, and then Tony Allen was a holdover, and then Pierce changed his game and became more mature, like a leader, as opposed to like I'm just trying to get my points. So all of that was behind Kevin. Like it's serious business now. The Celtics ain't playing, and I think that for years they had tried the conventional way of rebuilding. Let's go through the draft. Let's get these young guys together, and they're going to win and win. They'll get better and better. And Danny was just like, my job's on the line, Doc's job's on the line. Like, we got to do something different. And then obviously that started the whole advent of like the big three with LeBron, Wade, and Bosh. And, we can talk about Kyrie, Harden, and Durant. That lasted about half a minute. But it started the big threes, like, getting all-stars to play together. And, that was through trades. That wasn't through free agency like the Heat was. They had to convince Kevin to come to Boston because, as you guys know, Boston is not a city that black players like playing or because of the history. Now, I think it's over-exaggerated. I think it's different when you get here and you live here and you become a member of the community here, and people love it here. Isaiah loved it here. Kevin loved it here. But in the 2000s, that wasn't necessarily the case. People trying to run to Boston. Like, especially, they're going to pay you mad money, but, people weren't trying to come to Boston, and it opened the doors for the free agency for the guys like Al Horford later on, or guys to come in like, I want to play in Boston. I heard good things about, Marcus Morris, guys who were, not considered quote unquote Boston guys, Jay Crowder's over years, like end up loving playing in Boston. And that started with Garnett. And obviously Doc is a great salesman, but that started with Garnett and started with his kind of saying, okay, it's cool here. It's cool.
Yeah. I mean, last night, the big three, it was great to see the situation with Garnett and Ray Allen. And before he gave Ray Allen his props for coming to the game and showing him support, he said something along the lines like, you're next. I think he was like, you're next, Lord, you're next, right? Do you see a time where Ray Allen can come back here and actually, because I mean, he started with the Supersonics, right? And that's no longer around. And his jersey hasn't been retired anywhere. Could that be something that you see happening in Boston?
Yeah, I mean, I think if any possibility of it happening, it was helped out yesterday because he came back. The organization wasn't really happy with his decision either in terms of him leaving for Miami. And the thing is that, like, I'll break down what happened because, I think people don't understand kind of how it all went down. It wasn't like Ray had offer from Celtics, offer from Heat, was like, oh, screw y'all, big three. I'm going to Miami. It was time. It was years in the making. That 11-12 season, like, the Ray was kind of being pushed out. If you guys remember, 10 years ago, Avery Bradley was like an up-and-comer. Remember, they drafted him in 2010. He came to the league as a plus defender. Not a great shooter, and he's never become a great shooter, but an active, capable shooter now with the Lakers, and still a plus defender. But young Avery was a plus defender, and Doc loved that he could, cover, Jameer Nelson. Remember those days, full court, and wear him out. Like, he could wear you out because he had that energy. So Doc was started getting him Ray's minutes. And remember, he was starting over Ray in that 11-12 season. And then in the first minute of free agency after the 11-12 season, Danny Ainge called Jason Terry. He didn't re-sign Ray. And the Celtics, during that 11-12 season, could have re-signed Ray. They were eligible to offer him an extension to bring him back for multiple years. They didn't. So Ray sees the writing on the wall. I'm losing my minutes to Avery because Ray's not a great defender, and he was getting older. The first person you call free agency is Jason Terry, who's basically one of my rivals. Like, he's a spot up 3-point shooter. He's a 2. Like, okay, so we're gonna play. How's that gonna work? We're gonna play together. Like, this is before kind of the Steph Clay thing where you could put 3-4 different shooters on the floor. Because I don't know if you would play Ray and Jason Terry at the same time, because who they gonna stop, right? But Ray sees the writing on the wall. So then here comes the Heat, LeBron and Wade, give him a call. He goes down to Miami, has dinner with Mickey Arison, the owner, Pat Riley, the president, Eric Spoelstra, the coach. He's on South Beach. It's July.
It's nice.
Yeah. It's evening time. Boats are going down the damn, going down the Gulf. And it's Miami in July. And he's a golfer. Like, what you going to do? Like, you know what I'm saying?
That ain't Boston. That ain't Boston.
A chance to play with Brian Wade and Bosh, like, and win a chip and probably have a better role. And so I can't blame him as much for doing that decision, because then the Celtics came back with the double money. They offered him more money because Miami couldn't offer him a lot of money. But then by then, Ray was already recruited, and it wasn't really about money. So people were like, oh, well, Celtics offer him twice as much. They did, but it was after the fact. And then we all, somebody offers you some extra stuff after the fact, you feel some kind of way, right? Like, you feel like, nah, I'm good. My man offered me 5. I'll take his little 5. You can have your 10. Like, I'll deal with this. Because my man came up to me with sincerity, was like, dude, I'll give you 5 for that. You're going to think about it for 30 minutes and then come back, I'll give you 10. No, I'm good. I'll take my man's 5. He was sincere. So there was a level of, like, loyalty. And so I think Celtic fans should be more mad at Celtics management than they should be mad at Ray. I understand being mad at Ray because you signed with the rival team. It's Bron. Bron was the arch rival. Dwayne Wade was coming that way too. And so Kevin took that personally, which I get because that's Kevin. Everybody knows Kevin. He take that personally. So he didn't hide that. So I thought it was amazing for them to get together to make it happen. Because that's what everybody want to see. And then dudes is 40-something, like Ray said, we old men now. Like, ain't no young folks want to see old men beef. Like anyone want to hear about anyone want to hear about 2012. That's 10 years ago, right? I mean, as much as that's memorable, like what happened 10 years ago? Like, was Drake even out in 10 years ago? Was Rihanna like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know how long 2012 is? Like, you know how,
It was a hot minute.
As much as like it's only 10 years ago, that's a long ass time ago. I don't know what the number one song, I can look it up. Number one song this week was in 2012. I bet you would be like, what? Like, you know, we'd be laughing at that. And you know what I'm saying? Somebody we probably
like Ja Rule is still around.
Yeah, so somebody been out the scene. Somebody been out the scene for literally 5 or 8 years or somebody, right? So that's a long time. But they want to hear about these old beefs about 2012, even though that's not all that long ago. In this society, that's a minute. So I'm just glad that they were able to make up, and they don't have to be best friends, but you know, take pictures. People want to see that. People want to we want to remember the good times in our lives in terms.
Right.
Celtic fans remember those guys coming together, winning a chip. They want to remember that. And then dudes beefing don't help. It don't help their image. It don't help the Celtics. It don't help nobody. It just helps people who like beefs. You know what I'm saying? Like that ain't, you know, there's people who love beef, but other than that, it don't help nobody else.
Do you think he get his number retired though by the Celtics?
That's a good question. 5 years.
I mean, he needs a home,
enough?
right?
Is that long enough for him to have his number retired, even though he won the championship?
I mean, KD had Kevin had 6 years. Kevin had 6. He had 5. So
right.
The impact is different.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna drop this on you. I'm looking this up now. The number one song in 2012. I'm gonna throw "Lotus Flower Bomb" by Wale. Make Me Proud by Drake featuring Nicki Minaj. The Motto, Drake featuring Lil Wayne, and Love on Top by Beyonce.
A long time ago.
That's a minute ago, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, that's that's a minute ago.
Sure.
Love on Top didn't seem. It didn't seem like it was 10 years ago. Damn, I'm tripping off Love on Top. I thought it was like 5, 8 years ago, but 10 years ago. So, like, that's a minute. But it turns back to Ray. We're number retired. I think it all depends on, do you give him his props because he's in Hall of Fame? There's organizations that retire numbers. Like, okay, I look at Will Chamberlain. Will Chamberlain played with Philadelphia Warriors. So Philadelphia, with the 76ers, retires number. And then, because he played with Philadelphia, then Warriors, then they came the Sixers. Then the Golden State Warriors retired his number because he was officially the Warriors. And then the Lakers, even though he played the Lakers like 3-4 years, retired his number because he's a damn Hall of Fame, one of the greatest of all time. You give Ray that kind of treatment because he's a Hall of Famer, you retire his number. Like the Red Sox retired Pedro, but Pedro was a great Red Sox. He didn't play. He wasn't in Boston for no 12 years, but that stretch in Boston was so good that you give him his flowers. So it all depends on whether you think the Celtics should retire him because he's a Hall of Famer or his contributions to the organization. Like, do you put him in a category, and you guys have to look this up, like a Dennis Johnson. Dennis played with Seattle and Phoenix, came to Boston in the early 80s, was kind of the point guard, the leader on the floor of those teams that won titles in 84 and 86. He played like 8 or 9 years in Boston or whatever, but he didn't put up crazy numbers, but he was like the floor leader that helped them win 2 titles. They retired his number. Maxwell, great Celtic, played 8, 9 years, MVP of the 84 finals, they retired 31. So it all depends. Do you put him in that kind of category because he won a championship and then raised in the Hall? So that can make even better case. But it might take a while. It might take some convincing. It might take looking closer at his numbers, him breaking the 3-point record when he was with the Celtics. Obviously now it's Steph's record, but he was all-time 3-point leader. That happened in Boston. So it's an argument. I mean, I'm not going to say they should. I think it's an argument. And I also think the relationship with the organization, I mean, someone was asking me on another podcast, what about Rondo? That's a real good question. Rondo put up the crazy numbers. He was playoff Rondo. He helped win that championship. I think everything, I'll put it like this. Everything changes. Everything is so different if they win that Game 7 in 2010.
Yep.
They win that second chip. If they win that second chip, a lot of this don't happen.
Yeah.
If they win that second one,
absolutely.
People say, oh, well, Garnett got hurt in 2009. We don't know because they lost. But the 10 team goes all the way to Game 7. My biggest issue with that team is they blew that Game 6. They lost 89-60. They had a closeout game in LA. They scored 67 points. That's the game they should be regretting, not the Game 7 when Rasheed got all tired and Kobe went to the line 28 times. And Kobe was 6 for 24, but he went to the line and won the game. And Artest hit a big three. Derek Fisher hit a big three. And they got tired. That team was just exhausted. And it was never the same after that.
Yeah.
Because that summer LeBron went to Miami.
Yeah.
So if they win that second chip in 10, and people will, you can't take a chip away from Kobe. Yeah, like that would have meant Kobe wouldn't have had another chip.
Yeah.
But
Facts.
they win that 10 chip. The whole perception of the big three is different. Ray probably does get his number retired pretty easily if he win 2 chips in 5 years.
I agree. I completely agree. I mean, in my opinion, I don't think he gets in just because he wasn't there that long enough, and he didn't have the cultural change that Kevin Garnett had. But he was very instrumental in bringing Kevin Garnett to Boston. But I guess he can't get in the Raptors for that.
It depends. I mean, the Celtics went ham on retiring numbers in the 60s and the 70s. Like everybody, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you look at the numbers and some of the numbers, like if you were just around, like, and it's not no disservice, to those guys, but they gave almost entire teams, like, you look at the Bob Cousy, Sat Sanders, Casey Jones, Sam Jones, Heinsohn, Don Nelson, Bill Sharman, it's piling up, right? And all those guys didn't have great numbers, but they were longtime Celtics, or they were members of the team for 8, 9, 10 years, because back then guys didn't play 15, 18 years. They didn't make enough money, and their bodies were breaking down because they were playing in freaking chucks. So, it's not, we ain't talking about Kobe and LeBron playing until they 40. These guys had torn up knees and all that. It's a miracle some of these guys even walk now, because how physical that game was and how the conditions were not, not good for professional athletes. But they retired a lot of those numbers, and so that kind of takes the air out of the tire for the current guys, because it's just like, well, damn, y'all gonna retire another number? What's up with that? Like, people were like, other than the pockets, like, well, who's the next Celtic to get their number retired? And is it Ray? Is it Rondo? To me, it might be Marcus Smart.
Really?
Because he's the perfect example.
I mean,
and if they go to the finals or something, he's a perfect example of a longtime Celtic who paid his dues. He's 8 years in. It seemed like he'd been here 15 years. I don't know if y'all remember life before Marcus Smart, but it seemed like he'd been here a minute, right?
Yeah. He does. No doubt.
He got drafted in 14, and look how long ago that is. We talking about 2012. Marcus been here since 14. That seemed like 30 years ago, right? So it's like he is a perfect example of like giving his all to organization, good and bad, some of the mistakes he's made and all that, ups and downs. He's been through it all. He's still playing his ass off. So he might be the next Celtic to get his number retired if it's not Ray or Rondo. I think Rondo put up the great numbers. He was on his way to Hall of Fame numbers in terms of his assists, and then he tore up his knee, and then the Celtics moved him, and all of a sudden he became this journeyman or whatever, unfortunately for him, because I thought before that knee injury, and then the coach, the doc leaves and all that, he got, Danny trades Ray goes, and then Danny trades Paul and Kevin. So there was Rondo, and then Perk got traded before that. So, Rondo's on the island by himself, what's up? And so I think it was a matter of time before he got moved, and that's what happened.
Gary, is there anybody in the Raptors that didn't win a championship?
Reggie Lewis, but that situation, unfortunately.
Right.
Yeah.
I think is another thing. Another good thing that was kind of overshadowed this weekend was that his wife came back to the Garden, and his wife is, I don't know if you guys were around in that situation, but it got really ugly in terms of his heart condition. Whose fault was it? She blamed the Celtics. The Celtics said, we told him not to play. He was practicing because he if you guys don't know, he was working out. He was told not to play again. He went to another doctor, got a second opinion, who told him, no, you have a virus. You don't have a heart condition. You have a curable virus. So, but the doctor didn't tell him go out there and work out. He just said it's going to take time, but you have something curable. So he goes out to Brandeis, works out, and he falls out and passes away. So his wife ended up, kind of taking the stance that it's everybody's fault, like the doctors, the Celtics. So she made it kind of uncomfortable for the organization. And the Celtics stance was like, we told him his career was over. Like, we sent him to, I think she went to Brigham and Women's, and he went to New England.
Baptist?
Yeah, it was two different major hospitals, and they gave him 5 specialists that said he can't play anymore. It's too much of a stress on his heart. He can do recreational stuff, but he can't play NBA ball. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so he didn't want to hear that, unfortunately. And he's 27 years old. I mean, nobody wants to hear at the prime of your life that you can't do what you love to do. But the fact that she came back this weekend, and represented her husband and everything, I thought that was a big deal too, because that shows that they've mended fences. It's very sad. She was pregnant when he passed away, so he has a daughter he never met.
Oh my goodness.
So, I thought that was he didn't win a chip, but I think the rest of them up there, as far as I can remember, have all won a championship. Dave Cowan, JoJo White, John Havlicek, all those greats have all won championships.
That leads me to this question. So does that mean any of the current Celtics, if they don't win a championship, they don't make it to the banner? And that includes Marcus
That's
Smart.
That's a good question, Vladimir.
Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. I don't care how well those guys play and how deep in the playoffs they get. If we don't win a championship,
do they lower their standards? Because you look at other organizations, and they've retired numbers of guys who didn't win a championship. You know what I'm saying? Ted Williams retired in Boston. He didn't win. He won a World Series. And anybody would retire his number. There's plenty of people who, in organizations, who got their number retired, who did not win a championship with that organization, but they gave their all. So would the Celtics say, well, someone like Marcus, you didn't win a chip, or Jason Tatum? But I think, honestly, it's sort of like what they were saying the other night at this gala that they threw, you're not a Celtic till you win a championship. We deal with championships. That's what they say. We deal with championships. We are winners. And if that's the standard you hold, then the answer will probably be no. You got to win a chip to get into that fraternity, to get in that club, to be given that ultimate respect. Because as you know, people can run down every member of the 2008 team. Even guys who didn't know, Brian Scalabrine, Scott Pollard, Gabe Pruitt, Leon Poe. Leon Poe he get big standing ovations.
Yeah.
Leon Poe played 5 years in the league. His knees were really – he had 2 ACL tears in college, one in high school and one in college. So he was not going to play long. And he played 5-6 years in the league, but Leon still worked for the Celtics now. Leon still gets standing ovations. Hey, Leon, that's for winning the chip.
Yeah.
How much that means?
Right.
You know,
What about
so it's
what about
important. And like, it
Scalabrine,
is
man?
true. It's a fraternity. And the Celtics, all these guys got to figure it out if they want to be part of that fraternity. You can put up all the points and you could be all-time this and all-star that, all-NBA this, but where's your jewelry at? That's what people want to know.
And I completely agree with you, and I think that's where the bar is. And since we're talking about the current guys, I mean, yesterday would have been a better day if those guys had won against the Mavericks. Let's talk about that game a little bit. You know, they doubled Jason Tatum most of the game, and he had to pass the ball. And Jaylen Brown didn't show up to the party. I mean, he had one big dunk, but he only had 14 points, I think. Let's talk about that game and how the Celtics couldn't come up with a better plan once Jason Tatum couldn't score.
And losing by 3 once more to the Mavericks.
No, every time we play those guys, we lose by 3 points. Like it's
a 3-pointer,
it's frustrating. Man. Right. It is. No, it's ridiculous.
I think that this is a game. Okay, put it in perspective. Dallas playing real well, and Dallas got to a really rough start on the Jason Kidd. And, you know, there was just lineup changes, and Porzingis was just hurt, and Luka was overweight and out of shape, and, not all that. But they've made some changes, and Jason is defensive coach. You can say what you want about Jason Kidd. Jason can coach some defense. And Dallas, one of the best defensive teams in the league. And they put it on the Celtics in the fourth quarter, 6 for 23 in the fourth quarter the Celtics went. The Celtics were 1 or 2 shots away from sealing that game. They had the ball a couple of times up 289, could have sealed it with maybe a 3 or a 2 to go up 5. They didn't, and Luka hits that tie-in 3, and then Dinwiddie hits the clincher. You know, they have to learn that teams are now going to go all out to stop Jason Tatum. None of that. People are not going to let him go 54 anymore. He went 54, and then the next night, Daniel Gasol went 44. 98 points in 2 games. So the word is out. Jason is on one, and we need to stop him. So it's up to Jalen. It's up to Marcus Smart. Maybe not as much scoring. It's up to other guys to score. I thought Jalen was okay, but didn't step up. You know, there's some shots he could have hit. Jalen's got to be better. If Jalen's got to be like, oh, you going to let me go to work? Okay.
Yeah.
Because that will take less pressure off Jason. And both of them can do it. He can't double. He should take double Jason if Jalen's going for 35, right?
Exactly. He should take it as disrespect and show up to the game. Like he should
take that as an insult.
Exactly.
That other teams are like, no, like you're good, but this dude, nah, man, we gonna make sure he doesn't beat us. I thought the problem yesterday, guys, was the bench. The bench went a combined 6 for 23 from the field. Derek White, 2 for 10. Grant Williams, 1 for 6. Peyton Pritchard, 3 for 7. Peyton Pritchard hit a couple of threes.
Clutch threes, yeah.
In the fourth quarter.
He did.
I need to see more personally from Pritchard in terms of hitting the big-time shots. Not in the second quarter, but in the fourth quarter. Derek White is 24% from the three-point line since he's got to the Celtics. And if you guys notice, most of his threes are open.
Yeah.
Open for a reason.
Yeah. He's got to start burning defenses. He can't go 2 for 10. Now, he was doing good. He's doing good in terms of attacking the basket, getting to the free throw line. I like that. But his three-point shot is really erratic. And he came as like a 32% three-point. He didn't come as a good three-point shooter. But I think the Celtics are like, with more open looks, because now teams are going to emphasize guard Jason and Jalen. He'll get better looks. His percentage will go up, but that's not happening. And I think yesterday they needed Derek White to be good. They needed someone else to be good because the Mavericks, Jason went 7 for 23, 3 for 10 he had 21 points. He had 4 in the second half. So they shut Jason down in the second half. The Celtics scored 45 points in the second half on 34% shooting. Marcus Smart was their leader, scoring with 11 points, but he only had 2 shots. He went to the free throw line. So, to me, the problem was Jason didn't get no help because Jason was not on yesterday.
Yeah.
And Jalen had 7 points in the second half, 3 for 8, minus 17. You know, Derek White, 2 points. Grant Williams in the second half, 2 points. Peyton hit those 2 threes. He had 6. So you're looking at Jason needs help. And this is one of my bigger concerns about this team all season is you need more scoring punch off the bench. That's why I thought, now maybe I'm crazy, they should have signed Isaiah Thomas, but that's another subject for another day. But I thought that they needed somebody who can just come off the bench and light it up, a Jamal Crawford type, not Jamal now, not at 42, but I'm talking about like somebody who just like a Lou Williams, you know what I'm saying? Somebody knows how to get buckets, right? And,
a professional bucket getter.
Yes. Not necessarily a defensive stopper. If you get a professional bucket getter who's a defensive stopper, damn, he's a max dude.
Dude,
right?
he a problem.
Yeah,
Big
yeah.
problem.
Like he ain't gonna be available at the damn trade deadline.
Facts.
So I thought that, Terrence Ross was somebody, but Orlando held on to him. They need a bucket getter. And I think now they're gonna have to rely on whoever's in that team. Maybe it's time to give Nick Stauskas a look to see if he can get buckets because he had 57 in the D-League game and 45, I think, the next night, or 44, something like that. So it might be
43,
yeah. So Peyton is, I thought, done better than expected, but I need to see Peyton do more in the fourth quarter and really burn defenses before I'm like, okay, he's the guy you can trust. Derek White, we'll see. I mean, because he's getting a lot of open looks, and his three-point shot has not fallen so far with the Celtics.
Yeah, no, it sure hasn't, but absolutely. And, as much as I like the player, right, it's been disappointing. His shooting, even Marcus Smart's been shooting better than him, and Marcus Smart, as we all know, is, has proven in most of his career that he's, not a really effective or, high percentage shooter. He's a volume shooter. He's going to get up a lot of shots, but, not hit too many of them. I was just going to make one quick point. I think they need to go to like Al Horford more, because Horford's a guy that not only can score, but he can make plays, like, for others and create. So maybe they need to look if, Jason Tatum's getting, you said, all that attention, those double teams blitzing off the pick and roll and off the catch, maybe, go to Al Horford and go to a guy that can not only score, but that can be able to make plays, for others and create offense on that way. So I wanted to ask you, Gary, what your thoughts are, on the team, overall from the beginning of the season to, where they're at now is as far as what was the turning point. And then also is this team true contenders in the Eastern Conference? Can they possibly, get to the Eastern Conference Finals or Finals this year? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, guys, I'm impressed with their turnaround. I mean, I had counted, and you can count last night too. I had counted before the Detroit game, so you can count that one too. The Detroit loss right before the All-Star break, right?
Yep.
I had counted 12 games that they lost in the first half before the All-Star break that they led in the fourth quarter. I'm not talking about led by 2 with 11 minutes left in the game and then the other team went on a 20-0 run. I'm talking about like up a couple of points with 2 minutes left. Like legit chances to win the game. And we can go through the schedule and we can pick those games, the ones that they've blown, the 25-point lead against New York, the 19-point lead at home against Chicago, the season opener against the Knicks, where they went to double overtime, and the home game against Philly where they got outscored 19-6. There are so many games, and I think it amounted to like 12. Like the Clipper game when they went 4 for 42 from 3. San Antonio game where Jalen blew the layup at the buzzer that would have tied it. I mean, I'm just coming off the top of my head, and there's more games. You got the Milwaukee game on Christmas where they led in the fourth quarter and they lost down the stretch, right? There was 12 And you can see now 14 games that they could have won. So you give them 7 of those. You don't give them all 14 because that's not going to happen. But 7, and this team is probably first in the East.
Yeah.
Okay. The fact is they're shaking that off and bounce back from that. So I think I'm impressed with how they bounce back, become a more defensive-minded team as Ime Udoka wanted from the jump. And they're winning these type of games. They're blowing teams out. Now, they got to get better at close games. The record is still very porous in 5 points or under. They got to learn how to – because that's what the playoffs are going to be, right? They're not going to blow everybody out. Right. So I'm happy, impressed with their turnaround. And I do think they're a contender. Are they a dark horse? I would say a dark horse because, one, like I need to see more in the playoffs. Like you could say, they've been to the Eastern Conference Finals a couple years in a row. Jason's been to 2, Jalen's been to 3. Like you could say that, right? The 2 against Cleveland and the 1 against Miami. Well, I need to see this current crew in heavy, intense games. If not, I think you got to give Milwaukee an edge. You got to give maybe Miami an edge. Brooklyn, we'll see what happens when they get Simmons back and if Kyrie's allowed to play full time. Philadelphia is kind of back up and down after kind of soaring when Harden got there. I think they're beatable. I think Chicago's beatable. But I need to see more before I say, oh, the Celtics are a contender. Like, I need to see them win at Milwaukee. I need to see them handle a team that's as good or better than they are. Like that game at Miami when they just shut the Heat down. Like, I need to see that. Not all the time, but, like, I need to see them match up against a team full strength, looking them eye to eye. We'll see that down the stretch. They end the season at Chicago, at Milwaukee, at Memphis. Okay? So DeMar and his boys, then Giannis and that crew, and then Ja and that crew probably playing for a playoff team, so all those games will be meaningful. They still got Miami left, right? Then road trip coming up, Golden State, and they got the Joker on Sunday, right? So they got some tough games. They got Utah and Minnesota, so Donovan Mitchell and his guys, and then Cat and those guys. Like, they've got games that are going to be tough that they need. I need to see more. I need to see them go through that. And they've done well. They took care of Atlanta. They took care of Brooklyn. Even with Durant and Kyrie, they took care of Charlotte, a team that's given them problems over the years. But I need to see them consistently punch first, jump on teams. It would have been a really good win on Sunday if they beat the Mavericks. I would have really added to their momentum because now they're a little bit now because you get Golden State. You don't want this to turn into a real losing streak, right? Then you got Sacramento, it's a tricky game, because they don't play well in Sac. And it's always a letdown game after you've given your all to play against Golden State. Then you go to Sac and you're like, oh, these dudes trying to, that's their Super Bowl. And, because you coming from the East and they ain't got nothing to play for, they're playing real hard. So I think the Celtics have a chance to be a contender, but I consider them now, guys, a dark horse, a team that nobody wants to play, but a team that's going to have to upset somebody. In that, whether it be, Miami in a series, Milwaukee. I don't know if I've seen enough to think, oh, yeah, they can beat Milwaukee in 7, or they can beat Miami in 7. I need to see more.
For sure. Absolutely. I'm totally with you on that and totally agree with you on that. That, as great as they played, the last 2 months, since the beginning of January, we need to see this, carry on for the rest of the season and into the playoffs in order for, this season to be, considered a success and for this team to really be heading in the right, direction moving forward. So another question wanted to ask you was
last question.
Yeah, right. There we go. What's your favorite, memory and moment covering the team, and what was your favorite moment when KG was here during his time with the Celtics?
Wow, the favorite moment covering the team was probably just that 2010 run. That was my first year on the team, going to the finals, beating Dwight, beating LeBron. They weren't supposed to win either of those series. And, like, how well they played against LeBron. his last year in Cleveland, and then that run against Orlando where Dwight in his prime, and Dwight take a lot of hits now and all that, but Dwight in his prime was a dude. He was tough to deal with. So that was enjoyable, and just seeing the rise of like guys like Jason and Jalen, to see them from being drafted to now. Jason's development, mentally, physically, emotionally. And give yourself some giggles. Google Jason's rookie year, how he looked. You know what I'm saying? With the fade and no facial hair, and you know what I'm saying, and the little line beard, and now he got the text those. They'll be Google those dudes' pictures when they were rookies, and just give yourself a laugh, and it just shows you how fast time goes and how much they've grown, and just to see those guys develop. When you see guys get drafted and you get to know them, and you see them at 19, and then you get to know them at 26, that type of thing. So that's always enjoyable. Kevin's a dude. I mean, he's just hilarious because, like, you can't take anything he does real personal. Like, you just have to accept that that's who he is. Like, there's times he would not want to answer questions. You have to learn what to ask him. Don't ask him to gas up another player from another team. Do not do that. What you think of LeBron tonight? Like, no. I would cringe.
Who cares?
I would cringe when somebody would ask him how did he feel about D Wade scoring 42. Be like, no, dude, don't ask him. Oh, Wade was great tonight. That is not freaking happening. You would just it was fun to get used to how he did it. Like, don't ask him about his technicals. We get tech, you just learn. You got to learn how to maneuver, manage Kevin. Certain things you ask him, certain things you don't, but you see the rookie reporters or the young reporters or the reporters for other teams come in and want to get a sense, like, Kevin's too smart for that. But there's one story in New Orleans where they was in the locker room and Kevin was telling some stories or whatever. So I walked into the locker room during availability, and then Kevin got quiet, and he goes, he points at me, goes, I don't want that light-skinned motherfucker listening to my story. So,
oh shoot, what?
So, but it was funny because he referred to me there on as light-skinned motherfucker, and
oh wow, oh my
but
God.
it was just like anybody was a motherfucker to him. It wasn't just personal. It was just like I was light-skinned. He knew my name. He would never acknowledge me by name. He has since he's retired, but I talked to somebody who was like, he knows your name. And I was like, really? He goes, yeah, he don't want to give you enough respect in terms of just like acting like he actually likes you, because that's that focus, that intensity. I get it. It was funny. And so he was just like, hell no, I ain't saying this shit around that light-skinned motherfucker. And I was just like,
oh my goodness.
And I was like, all right. So I was like, hey, so he's like, I'll tell when this motherfucker leave. And so, I just thought that was hilarious. That was my favorite Kevin story because it was so him. You know what I'm saying? Like, ain't none of us take too kind of being called a motherfucker. Excuse my language, but with him, it was funny. Like you can't help but laugh.
What'd you do? You just laugh?
Okay. So that was my favorite Kevin story.
What did you do? Did you just leave?
I stayed there for a minute, and then I just nothing was happening. So I'm like, okay, I'll let him finish his story. He didn't chase me out, but everybody was just looking at me like, you really just gonna stay and kick it? And I was like, all right, man. All right, I'll let you got your private locker room time. I'll bounce. So, yeah,
That's
man,
hilarious,
that's funny.
man.
Oh, that is laughable. That is pretty funny and pretty awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Gary. Much appreciated.
Well, Gary, man, we've had you for quite some time now, man. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on Pro Fan Sports, man. We really appreciate it. Keep up the good work. We're going to keep reading your content, keep listening to all the questions you're asking, during the press conferences, man. Again, it was a pleasure talking to you, man.
Guys, thanks a lot. It was a pleasure. Anytime. Let me know. Anytime.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely, man.
absolutely. We'd love to have you back for
Okay.
sure. No doubt. We will definitely be bringing you back again. Absolutely. This was a lot of fun and amazing and incredible. You know, you sharing all the Celtics knowledge, with us. With the current, team and the past teams as well. So no, this is greatly appreciated and and was great to be able to learn all of that all that information about the Celtics and the inside scoops on what really went down behind the scenes that
Yeah.
most fans and people don't know.
No problem, guys. Anytime.
Thank you.
Have a good night, Barry.
Thank you very much, Gary.
Gary, have a good night, man. Thank
All
you
right.
so much. Appreciate
Okay.
you.
Thank you, guys.
No problem. Pleasure meeting you.
Yes,
Ooh,
sir.
that
So
was awesome.
that was Gary Washburn, man. If you want to follow him, he got, he's been in the game for over 20 years now. It's at G Washburn Globe on Twitter, man. The guy got all the content in the world, and make sure you read his segment in the Boston Globe as well, man. He's a legend in the game, and we're going to keep bringing these legends out here, in the sports
You
media
already
out in Boston, man. So make sure you're following him. Make sure you're following us. It's at ProFan Sports on everything except for Instagram, and that's ProFans_sports. Make sure you're subscribing, you're liking these videos, commenting, sharing it to your friends. It all helps us grow. It helps out the channel, man. Until next time, we'll holler at y'all. Peace out.
So everyone, have a good week. See y'all next week on episode 104.